everyone, and welcome to Our Town. I'm Jill Hindley Lawrence, and we're very excited here at NCTV to be hosting a candidates forum for the two candidates for the state representative for 9th Norfolk District. So we have some rules and some outline and a plan to go through as the two candidates discuss the topics and their stances on the topics that are most important to the voters in the 9th Norfolk District. So we're very happy to provide this service to the community, and we're excited to hear what they have to say. So I'm going to go ahead and begin just by introductions, and then I'll kind of come back and talk about the rules. So to my left here is Mr. Kevin Calkett, and he is running on the Democratic ticket for the state representative, and he is a resident of Norfolk. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jill.
Calkett. And on my right is Mr. Marcus Vaughn. He's on the Republican ticket for this state representative, and he's a resident of Rentham.
Thank you very much, Jill.
Welcome.
Thank you,
Marcus.
Appreciate
it. So this was something that we conceived of and thought that it would be nice to bring the two candidates together and to be able to discuss the topics in a neutral environment, and to make it as fair as possible, and to do it live to tape like we are, so that people can watch it. With the election day only 11
Correct, 11 days, you got
days
it.
away. Yeah, oh my goodness.
Not that we're keeping track or anything.
No, oh my gosh, yeah. You guys will be able to sleep in 11 days,
Yes,
right?
hopefully.
Yeah, so anyway, I just want to go, for the audience, to go through our outline and our just sort of the rules that we agreed upon, and then we'll go ahead and start with opening statements and introductions for the gentleman. So we broke it into 3 segments. Segment 1 is just simply introductions. Each candidate has 5 minutes to introduce themselves, their background, their experience, and why are you running for this seat? Because the voters would like to hear that. Segment 2 is the issues, and each candidate, we've got, so ahead of time, topics were identified and communicated to both candidates so that they were aware of what we would talk about, and we tried to keep those topics hyper-local, so because again, this is a state representative seat, and the voters of the Norfolk 9th District would, these are the things that we agreed that were some of the most important topics and issues to the voters. So I'm going to have a timer, and a plan is to introduce the topic and then take turns with up to 3 minutes each for each candidate to talk about their stance. And then after each candidate has gone, they can also have a up to 1 minute rebuttal for each topic, for each issue that we identified. And the one thing that I wanted to mention, that from a voter perspective, we were hoping that any new initiative or plan or program that is proposed, what may be proposed going forward if elected, maybe also include how that could be funded. So that's because that's often an important topic to voters, of where the funding would come from for new ideas that you may be wanting to present as a member of the state legislature. And then finally, segment 3 would be our wrap-up. So each candidate has 5 minutes. Is there anything to add additionally, that maybe didn't get covered during our issues? And how can we find out more info? And of course, we will cover that. So there's plenty of, where to go if you want to get more info about each candidate. And the campaign. So I think that covers everything for the rules. I've never done this before, so I am trying
You're doing
my best.
Great.
So anyway, yes, it's just important. NCTV felt it was very important to be fair and neutral, and here we are. So as we begin, we're going to start with Mr. Calkett, and we would like to give you 5 minutes to do an introduction, background, experience, and why you're running.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jill.
Yeah.
And first and foremost, thank you so much to NCTV for hosting this forum for us. You've been a pillar of this community for so long with assisting with getting information out, so truly appreciate the support and being able to put this together. Thank you so much, Jill, for agreeing to moderate this. I know putting all the structure together and research was a big part of it, so appreciated. And Marcus, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. This is a great service to the voters, and I really appreciate you being here as well.
Thank you.
My name is Kevin Calcutt. I grew up in a small suburban town identical to this one here in Norfolk, in one of the few rental apartments there, splitting time between my single mother and my father and stepmom. I worked during high school as a prep cook at a local restaurant and eventually decided to pursue culinary arts at Johnson Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island. While I do still love to cook, and while it could very well be the only thing that's keeping my wife with me during this long campaign, I did shift from culinary arts to front of the house during part of my degree program. Starting my career working in some of the largest hospitality operations in downtown Chicago, I developed a servant's heart, an approach to every service-related interaction that emphasized listening, addressing concerns, and leaving each engagement feeling valued. My professional evolution eventually took me through more administrative roles, where those discussions shifted from engaging with dishwashers and servers and focused more on executive leadership. But the key was, no matter who I was speaking to in those roles, the value of those engagements and their feedback was always consistent. As I shifted from operations management into those analytical roles, we found ourselves in the Boston area, looking for a place to start our family. Norfolk was the perfect blend of access to the city while maintaining the rural characteristics that were so appealing to us. However, upon purchasing our first home, we heard some concerns related to large development projects popping up in residential areas with very little oversight or leverage from the town. I started digging into these concerns and eventually decided to offer my professional experience to assist with proactive planning by running for a seat on the Norfolk Planning Board, which I won in 2017. It was there that I learned about the workings of municipal government, the areas of responsibility, the workflows of how policy is reviewed and eventually changed. I also learned from the planning board that it wasn't really the most impactful place to address growth planning. So in 2018, I ran for the select board on a platform of proactive planning, transparency development, and resident engagement. I was lucky enough to win that seat against a dedicated two-term volunteer that I might add has since become an endorser of our campaign. As a select board member, I had the opportunity to learn from some of the more experienced members through unique functions such as large capital projects, as well as the process of hiring a new town administrator. While incredibly valuable, the time to learn was brief, and with 2 members leaving the board before the next election, I found myself being elected as chair in my second year of service. In my new role, I embraced the opportunity to drive initiatives I had originally identified in my campaign, allowing for questions within the meeting on most agenda items, adding in a 3-minute public comment period for items that weren't on the agenda, starting office hours for those who wanted to connect with a board member offline, doing a monthly cable show with the town administrator to consolidate town discussions and updates, and aligning departments on a social media policy which allowed for increased engagement within the community. For as much as I was talking during that time, I did just as much listening. When the community identified concerns about transparency with our town budget, we set up a full-day public review with each department to not only talk about requests, but also to review the functions of each area to educate the public. When we heard concerns about a public safety project, we gathered as much information as we could and held a special public meeting to share everything we had learned and to take questions. In collaboration with the town planner, we also initiated a town center zoning committee to evaluate zoning standards for Norfolk Center in hopes of pushing further development. After a 2.5-year process where we engaged community members, abutters, landowners, and businesses, we successfully passed updated zoning guidelines for the new B1 Inner Core District at the 2021 annual town meeting. In my time as select board chair, I also prioritized collaboration with my counterparts in neighboring towns, pulling together the chairs from our regional school district to align on our annual approach to the budget, as well as reaching out to towns impacted by the MBTA Foxborough pilot were also part of that outreach. I was proud to be elected chair for a second consecutive year in 2020 and sought to build on some of the great initiatives that we successfully implemented as a group in the prior year. After being re-elected to the Select Board in 2021, I was also nominated by the board to serve as Norfolk's representative on the Norfolk County Advisory Board, due to my experience in working with municipal budgets. I was re-elected to this role this year as well. In addition to my work in government, I've also given back to our community in a number of volunteer capacities. I'm a proud member of the Norfolk Lions since 2018, and have also been a Norfolk youth soccer coach, SC Norfolk soccer coach, and Millis flag football coach. To pull all of that together, all these life experiences, professional achievements, and local government success, it really identifies a unique perspective that I'm well aware is not the common template for somebody who looks to get a political role. But I do truly believe that this perfect storm, for lack of a better term, of experiences is exactly what this district needs to be successful and to flourish in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Calcutt. Okay, Mr. Vaughn, so your turn. Please take 5 minutes, background experience, and why you want to hold this seat.
Yes, thank you very much, Jill.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Mr. Calcutt and Jill, for this great experience. It's been a whirlwind throughout the last 9 months, I'd have to say. I am Marcus Vaughn, candidate for state representative for 9th Norfolk. I have a very diverse background. Bringing it to the State House would be a culmination of different experiences. I grew up, part of my youth was spent in Dorchester. My family owns multiple businesses in and out of the Dorchester area in Eggleston Square, where I spent most of my time at my grandfather's and my uncle's barbershops, working the cash register, sweeping the floors, selling Christmas trees at some local lots that he had owned downtown Boston. My parents and my grandparents always really put forth the saying of good work doesn't go unnoticed. Hard work doesn't go unnoticed, and to make something of yourself. I was the first family member within a very large family to go to college, where I did my undergraduate studies at Syracuse University, and then proceeded to earn a MBA at California State University. I'm running because we need more balance in the State House and on Beacon Hill. Obviously, in a very blue state today, with the House legislature being 125 Democrats to 27 Republicans, we don't really have that balance. And I think most of us would agree, in order to obtain, great democracy, especially here in Massachusetts, that we do need, the checks and balances, as we, make good policy within our state. On the surface, like I said, I bring a culmination of diversity, I plan to bring that diversity to the chamber and to the caucus overall. My unique experience is being a small business owner, and my younger days of growing up, in the city of Boston, as well as growing up in North Attleboro, nearby North Attleboro, I think gives me a very unique perspective to serving the constituents of this district and overall the state and this Commonwealth. I believe we have more of an understanding of that today, as a lot of us would like to see equity across the board. And I would really appreciate your vote on November 8th and during this early voting period, as we look to a new wave of Republicans in the State House for years to come, and to have that balance on Beacon Hill and serve the Commonwealth as it should be served for in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Great. Okay, so that's a little bit of background experience, and I love that you both addressed, why you are running and what you, what drives you to be here. So moving on to segment 2, which is the issues, the topics that we discussed and agreed upon beforehand. So again, each candidate will have 3 minutes, and then I'll give you a little, tap to know that we're wrapping that 3 minutes, and then the other candidate gets a turn. So the first issue that, again, these were identified topics identified by voters that were things that they really seemed to ask when you're out and about and things, and also as well as, when I was able to talk to some voters this week to see what's important to you, what do you want to hear about. So issue number one is small businesses, the support of small businesses in this district. And just as some context, I think because of the coming out of the years of this restrictions on small businesses and some closures, it seems to be, I know that small business is always often at the top of people's questions and concerns, but maybe even more so in 2022, given what the last few years has looked like for all of us. So I'm going to take turns with it. So Mr. Calcutt, you're up first for this one. Would you please address that as you want?
Absolutely. So it's pretty clear at this point that throughout the majority of our service here on the Select Board, we've identified how important small businesses are to our communities. In my time on the Select Board, I'm proud to have supported them in different facets, especially during the very difficult times during the pandemic. As part of that, we waived liquor license fees for restaurants that were dealing with difficulties associated to pandemic restrictions. We brought together everybody for a roundtable discussion to discuss some best practices that we could use to be able to address some of those restrictions that had to get around them to ensure that their businesses were still viable. And further, we took the initiative to get together with the Norfolk Small Business Association, which was just starting back in 2020, to be able to lend a hand from a town perspective and connect them with the appropriate resources to address the gaps that they saw in terms of being able to function as a business. For instance, one of the things they brought up was an antiquated sign bylaw that restricted their ability to be able to advertise to people walking through town. So what we did is we brought in the town planner, we connected them with the planning board, and at this point they're working collaboratively to bring forward some adjustments to those sign bylaws to town meeting to get them changed to the benefit of all of our businesses. That's just one example of the ways that we've reached out to be able to help them. Throughout this campaign as well, we've put a heavy focus on being able to try to promote these businesses. I'm proud to say that we held 12 meet and greet events across every town, every of the 6 towns in this district, focusing on a restaurant, a coffee shop, or something of that nature. In addition to that, we also got a letter of appreciation from the Norfolk Small Business Association, identifying the support and the service that we were able to provide for them. And finally, we've held a number of fundraising events at small businesses in this district as well. 4 Kicks, at the Gavel, at Primavera. All of them have been held with the intent to be able to drive as much promotion and revenue their way as we can. So we eagerly look forward to being able to take that kind of perspective, that kind of focus, that kind of partnership, and the pride that we have in the number of individuals that have reached out to endorse our campaign, small business owners from all over this district, and bring that into this role at the State House.
Great, thank you. Perfect, okay. Your turn for this one. So, support of small businesses.
Yes,
please.
Well, as a proud supporter of small businesses and a small business owner myself, I currently own a electronic security company, and I'm partner in another security company. So I definitely, can understand the, trials and tribulations of owning a small business, especially in the landscape that we are in today, and what we just went through with COVID. I'm the candidate endorsed by the NFIB and Small Business Association. I think that speaks for itself as far as making sure that we are promoting tax relief for small businesses, flexible, affordable health coverage and group health coverage. One thing that small businesses really struggle with, and the high cost of health insurance, is the fact that they aren't able to get the same benefits as larger business entities, which obviously has a trickle-down effect to the employees that they are serving, and the cost of living as we see it in Massachusetts today. And then flexible labor regulations, making sure that it's easy to do business here in Massachusetts. We're at a point in our state where there's more regulation than ever before. Companies over the last couple decades have decided to move out of the state for more flexible business regulations. So we need to pull that back into our state and be able to have our workforce be benefited from it, and to keep our employees and great minds here in Massachusetts. having that advocacy on Beacon Hill is very important. So small businesses can definitely be supported by a candidate that has the know-with-all to push forth those efforts for years to come.
Great, thank you, Mr. Vaughn.
Thank you.
Okay, so our second topic, local police funding and support. Again, that's an important topic, it seems nationally, but it really comes down to like a local support within our town. So Mr. Vaughn, if you would like to begin this one, please.
Yes, thank you. So it's simple here as well. I am the only candidate that is highly regarded within the Black and Blue community, and the men and women fully support our campaign. This is why I've received the most support in the race in the policing community to date, between Massachusetts Coalition of Police, MassCop, State Police Association of Massachusetts, Massachusetts Police Association, and the Correctional Officers Federated Union. Our local and state public safety officials can be assured that I will advocate at all times on Beacon Hill for their well-being, their training, their funding, to make sure that our constituents feel and are safe in the communities that they live. Those resources are paramount to make sure that our children and our families are secured, feel a sense of security in their communities. I think obviously at the end of the day, we also want to make sure that our men and women in blue come home every day and every night to their families safe and sound. They are some of the pillars in our community, and we need to make sure that we are doing everything possible to support them, statewide. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Calkett, you want to touch on?
Well, I do have to admit that it is slightly disheartening to hear the perspective that there is only one candidate in this race who is behind our police force. As a member of the Select Board, I've done everything in our power to be able to fully fund their requests from a budgetary standpoint, to collaborate with them on initiatives whenever possible. But I figured the best way to be able to communicate that would be to read a letter of support that we recently received for an endorsement. And it reads, I'm writing this message in support of Kevin Calcutt for representative for the towns including Rentham, Walpole, Plainville, Norfolk, Millis, and Medfield. I have known Kevin since he first emerged into the public sector on the planning board in Norfolk and then as a member of the Select Board. I retired this past September from the Norfolk Police Department after serving for 46 years and the last 29 years as Chief of Police. We have had many interactions in his 2 terms on the Select Board and during his time on the planning board. I have always been an independent voter and until now felt it best to stay neutral and support whoever held the position. I can tell you that if I reached out to Kevin by whatever means, phone, email, text, or in person, that he would respond right away. Kevin took the time to meet with the 6 police chiefs from this district and listen to their needs and issues for as long as they needed. He exchanged contact information if they didn't already have it for future meetings or for issues that they might need help with. I fully understand that this position, like mine before I retired, requires us to make difficult decisions that not everyone likes. Kevin will make those decisions for citizens he would represent after careful consideration and/or seek the best alternative and not just vote with the party line, as we all know that he will be pressured to do. He will support the police and the work that they need to do and the work toward a more workable finished product for police reform that includes sufficient funding for training, the ongoing education of all police officers, and supply them with the tools and equipment they need to do the job in today's world. Kevin is a strong proponent of transparency in government, and I believe he will bring that philosophy from the local stage to the state level and make everyone, including fellow legislators, accountable to the taxpayers. I can tell you that in my time as Chief of Police, we had issues that needed a solution or an explanation, and even if it was painful or time-consuming to get it done, he made himself available and provided fairness to the process for me and the officers who worked in my department. I'm going to ask all of you in this district to vote for Kevin Calcutt for representative, as I truly believe that he is the best candidate. Signed, Charles H. Stone Jr., Norfolk Police Chief, retired. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Calkett. And this is the best place now to talk about a rebuttal. I think we didn't do that one for the small business, but you didn't use all your time for either of you did for that first topic. So now that we're still on local police funding. And Mr. Vaughn, would you like 1 minute to?
Yes, I think, to add to my comments, I think, as a small business owner, especially in this field in public safety, I serve a lot of municipalities and public safety officials. I have served them over the last 10 years. I understand, their, ins and outs of what they deal with on a day-to-day basis, and keeping them safe and keeping them well equipped to, provide good policing within our communities. And I'll continue to do that, as a servant on Beacon Hill. So,
thank you, Mr. Calkin. Would you like a minute?
No.
No.
I'm good, thank you.
All right, great. Okay, so moving on. Thank you both for those, both issues we've covered so far. And our next one on the list is the MBTA, commuter rail deficiencies, challenges, however we want to frame it. I know we've got the Foxborough station, which is an abutting town that has, kind of caused some frustrations among commuters, and many of the many voters in the 9th Norfolk district do depend on the MBTA commuter rail to get to work. So it is now your turn to go first.
Got it. Nice. Thank you.
So Mr. Calkin, if you want to go.
So it's no secret that the MBTA is in need of some attention, right? There have been a number of issues over the course of the last few months that have identified some clear deficiencies in the manner of which it's being managed. A lot of that is due to the misallocation of funding from operational uses to capital uses. And I think that there's a lot of benefit now to this added overview and oversight and assessment from federal authorities to be able to assist with being able to bridge how we're going to be able to move forward. A lot of people in our communities depend on the MBTA for transportation into the city. And as we get into a post-pandemic world where people are required to go back to the office, it's going to be vitally important for us to ensure that they have a safe manner to be able to do that. In addition, there are new zoning guidelines coming out from the state that require each municipality, if you do have an MBTA commuter stop, to be able to include a zone of multifamily unit housing around those areas. So in order for communities like Walpole and Norfolk to be able to accommodate for that, the commuter rail kind of has to be dependent. We kind of have to have something there to be able to justify increasing density and growth in those areas. So from my perspective, I had the opportunity to connect with a number of individuals from the MBTA, and they highlighted some of the ways that we'd be able to make that work, both from a legislative oversight standpoint, from help with the governor, and it really all ties to capital funding. Now, you had mentioned before that it's nice to say we want to get more funding to places, but we kind of have to identify where that comes from. One of the potential ways that we can do that is through ballot question 1 that we'll see on the ballots this fall. Part of ballot question 1 is to be able to generate new revenue by putting an extra 4% tax on anybody who earns over $1 million, just on that $1 million that goes over, or in excess of $1 million. And it's set to generate somewhere between $2.8 to $2.9 billion a year that we would be able to allocate to education uses and transportation uses. So from my perspective, that serves as a great opportunity for us to be able to make the necessary investments in MBTA and ensure that we are set up for success moving forward. The one other thing I will mention is that in my time on the select board, I did also deal with the Foxborough line impacts. I did organize between the towns impacted by our commuter line, and we started to see delays during the pilot in Norfolk, sometimes inconsistency, 35, 45 minutes. I reached out to to Walpole and to Franklin, tried to get them on board with sending a letter. Eventually, it was just our town who sent one, but we signed it to Steve Poptek, the general manager of MBTA, and identified that this was not workable for us. We needed to see a solution, and we could not deal with the negative ramifications of that pilot. So I'm happy to see that Keolis did keep us up to date on improvements and ways that they were able to resolve it, and we did see an improvement after time. But I'll be working closely with the people of South Walpole, especially the ones who are going to be most impacted by this change, to ensure that it is working for the greater good.
Okay, thank you. Great. So, Mr. Vaughn, MBTA commuter deficiencies.
Yes.
Your turn.
I look at it from a different angle and bringing some, outside, business people, private sector minded people to take a look at how the MBTA is run these days. Me being supported by the New England Laborers Union, wouldn't it be great if we, brought that manufacturing back here to not only the United States, but to Massachusetts to build these rail cars and make sure that the rail cars were, built in a manner that we wouldn't have these deficiencies to the level that we're having them today. we've spent millions of dollars up until this point, the MBTA, to try to get it on the right track. And throwing money at a problem really doesn't fix the issue. So I think all things should be on the table at this point, and bringing in some private sector minds into the mix to kind of evaluate what's going on with the MBTA and the future process of running such a critical part of our infrastructure in Massachusetts. It would be the right thing to do, and all options should be on the table at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Mr. Calcutt, would you like a minute to?
No, I think that in different ways we just said we agree that things need to be done in the MBTA world.
Yeah, no, you're right. And some of the issues you're going to, there's not going to
There's going to be a lot of alignment. You're right. Yeah.
Okay. So do you want another minute, or you feel?
No,
you feel good?
I have
okay.
nothing else to add.
I know.
Thank
Maybe
you.
I was a little too generous with my time.
Well, we might get there with some of these other topics. Don't worry.
I actually will add one thing
Okay.
as it relates to question one and the so-called millionaires tax. Prominent majority party leaders have already been on record saying that they can't guarantee that those funds will be appropriated to infrastructure and educational purposes. All we need is $2 billion in those funds, and the House legislature could basically take out any overage and allocate that to any part of the budget that they'd like. So it's a little bit disingenuous to tell people that it's going one way when the majority of the House legislature has been on record saying that they may not even appropriate those funds towards those buckets. So it's just something I wanted to add and make sure that people are aware of as they go to vote on question one.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Could I respond to that?
You can have a minute. Yep,
Sure,
because you didn't
thank
take
you.
it already.
So while there is an ongoing debate as to the requirement, or if there's a guarantee that that money will go to one of those two buckets, they're going back and forth on that. There's different perceptions either way. But I think at the core of it is that's what makes it so important to elect people that are going to follow through and carry forward the will of the voters. You want people who are going to be able to take that money as they defined it and put it to those areas. And I can tell you from my perspective, education and transportation are two vital areas of our local businesses, of our local economies that need that money. So from my perspective, it would absolutely go to those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, next topic, education. Just as an intro, this is kind of open to what the candidates feel is important about public education reform. And there's probably a couple subtopics under that, and I'm going to let you have the leeway to go in the direction that you want during your time. So public education reform, obviously, again, similar to the small business, we're coming off of some years of challenge with restrictions that now seem to be, again, 2022, we seem to be in a recovery in that way. So but you can take it in the direction that you want, and you are first, right?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn? Okay.
Yes.
So please.
Yes, so I think obviously during the last few years with the setback we have experienced in learning with our children, and my wife is a teacher in the Foxborough School District, and teachers have seen children kind of regress, and MCAS scores show that the recent MCAS scores within Massachusetts, not only educational wise but mental health wise, we're dealing with a lot of issues within the school system. It's more paramount than ever before that we utilize these funds, and if question one were to pass, to make sure that it goes in that appropriate bucket to kind of take care of some of the issues that we're dealing with within the educational system and get kids back on track where they need to be. we just came off of STEM Week, and we had some great things happening all over the state. Students engaged in a fun, competitive, and supportive new way of learning. And critical thinking. We need more of this within the education system. More to that, the Pathways program, and having career pathways that prepare, a lot of our low income, and high school students for the high demand jobs that have a direct result as far as having good wages and being able to enter in the workforce in information technology and healthcare and manufacturing jobs. Again, I spoke to that before, bringing, manufacturing back to Massachusetts. We used to be the manufacturing mecca of the United States, and I would love to see that come back. We have, a lot of open space and dedicated areas to high growth in the 495 corridor, and I would love to see our students be able to, transition to, high wage, high growth jobs, for the future within our state. And I think that's possible if we can allocate, the appropriate funding, to these special programs, in the future.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Calkett, do you want to take
Absolutely.
the 3 minutes on education?
And I will note that it is reassuring to hear my opponent identify that question 1 funding going to education would be a benefit to everybody. So
as long as
have another advocate.
As long as it's used for that.
So I look at this in 3 different ways, from 3 different perspectives, right? The first one is my children. I have 3 boys that are in our elementary school programs here in Norfolk right now. They're in 5th grade, 2nd grade, and kindergarten. As we've talked about before, Jill, my middle child, he went to kindergarten with a mask on, with remote learning, to 1st grade. He didn't see the faces of his classmates until midway through 1st grade. And that was detrimental. I mean, nobody's going to argue that point, that there was definitely a loss of social, economic, or social development that needed to be given the attention that it needs. From a second standpoint, my wife is a pediatric neuropsychologist who works with children in developmental disorders. And throughout that time, there were heartbreaking stories that she was addressing with kids who were falling into depression, falling behind at school, and simply just falling behind in general. And third is from the select board's perspective. Managing through that time was incredibly difficult, especially as the chair of the select board. To have to make decisions about budgetary items for schools that desperately needed support at that time, but not having the resources or revenue to come in, or being uncertain about what was coming in, so many difficult decisions had to be made. But we made those decisions in establishing partnerships with school committee members and administrators within our schools. We established those relationships so there was trust built, so we knew that if we had to hold something back, it would absolutely go back to those entities when we had the ability to do so. That's why I'm proud to say that even though we had a difficult period during the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, we have completely followed through on that commitment and funded our schools at 5% increase year over year in the 2 years since the pandemic to make them whole again. I also want to highlight the fact that Mark's made a great point about highlighting mental health. Mental health is a huge component of our public education system. And to be able to address that, I actually held a roundtable discussion focused on mental health, where I invited state legislators, professionals within the industry, nurses, doctors, however you want to look at it. And we talked openly about what ways can we direct our legislative functions to be able to address these key gaps, especially with children. So coming out of that meeting, we had some great direction on the focus needing to be on facilities and beds and ensuring they're staffed appropriately, and the things that we can do from that perspective. So I truly believe that there is a great opportunity for us to be able to appropriately address the issues coming out of our public education system. And I do believe that with the feedback and partnerships we've established, we're going to get there. I'll also note that I'm very proud to have earned the support of multiple school committee members from towns within our district, from KP school committee members. There is a growing consensus about the positive impact that our campaign is going to have on this position.
Thank you, Mr. Calkett. Mr. Vaughn, would you like a minute to?
I'm all set. I have nothing else to add.
Okay.
Thank
all
you.
Right. Yeah, on education.
Thank
okay.
you.
So we're good on that one. Okay, so the next one, addressing infrastructure needs. Now, obviously, we talked about the MBTA, so this would be outside of that in terms of, and going back to my intro, how as voters, we'd also like to know if there's a plan or proposal that you have, is how would that be funded, from where, because I think a lot of times voters are concerned about where the money, and obviously with the issues along those lines. So, Mr. Calcutt, I'm pretty sure you are now up to go first.
Thank you.
Infrastructure. Please.
So there is nobody better to speak to some of the challenges associated to the infrastructure in our towns than our select board members. Each year, the select board is charged with being able to allocate funding to ensure that our roads are maintained, that our DPW has the resources they need, and that capital projects find their way into a prioritization plan to ensure they're getting the funding that they need. It's not an easy job. Norfolk, for instance, right now on an annual basis gets $400,000 in Chapter 90 funds. If you were to go look at the presentation from our DPW department, that needs to be closer to $3.2 million to appropriately manage the condition of our roads. So there is a huge gap there that needs to be addressed. And God bless our DPW departments that find a way to turn those fish and bread into everything to feed everybody in town, right? To ensure that the most populated roads are the ones that get patched and filled and whatever they need. But it is a challenge because these projects need attention. I will say that we recently have experienced a once-in-a-generation level of funding coming from the federal government in the form of the ARPA funds. In working in collaboration with our federal delegation, we've been able to identify different projects in our municipalities that could benefit from these funds. Additionally, here in Norfolk County, the County Advisory Board is part of the group that reviews these projects from the towns and disperses the funds that came from the federal government. So I've had the unique opportunity to be able to see what other towns are doing as part of these projects and be able to relay them to other communities that could benefit from a similar type of effort. To really bring all this together, we held a roundtable discussion focused on the infrastructure needs of our communities. We invited the town planners from each of the 6 towns to come together and discuss what are your major impediments? Where are your gaps right now? Are there shared challenges that we all have that we could build off of? And just to be able to add in a perspective of a federal legislator, we brought in Congressman Jake Auchincloss to be able to provide his perspective and his experience. It was an amazing conversation, and we actually found that one of the biggest things that was needed in all of our towns was access to water. It is a clear impediment to growth at this point. And the only town that does have an abundance of water, being Millis, is currently dealing with PFAS issues and having to run it through quality, and which is a very expensive venture as well for a small town budget to adhere to. So from my perspective, we identified a lot of opportunities from the federal standpoint to be able to address these concerns and work collaboratively to be able to address them so that each of the towns can be able to grow and flourish. So I plan on bringing that into the seat moving forward as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Calcutt. Great, Mr. Vaughn.
Yes.
Infrastructure, your turn.
Yes, so I think we can definitely agree on a lot of the points that Mr. Calcutt touched upon. I too, as far as water resources, Millis having an abundance of these resources, it should be across the board in the district. And appropriating, again, goes back to question 1. If it does pass, I just hope that those funds are appropriated to the correct buckets within our state legislature to make sure that we take care of the infrastructure needs of the district and the state. Obviously, with COVID happening, it opened up our minds to the fact that, children weren't well equipped, sitting at home learning with inadequate, broadband access. So something that I'd like to see is utilizing those federal funds to, spread the wealth across the state and the district in particular to make sure that every child has, adequate broadband access, Wi-Fi access through the use of these funds. Making sure that our sidewalks and streets are well equipped to handle the traffic. As our district grows, it's grown quite significantly, and the roads are not being kept up as they should with limited funds, like Mr. Calcutt said. A $400,000 budget versus what we should have appropriated in the millions really does not solve the problem. So hopefully we can get to a place where funds are appropriated for the infrastructure and the growth of our communities for the future.
Thank you. Mr. Calcutt, would you like a minute?
I think maybe I'll just add, if that's quite all right, the fact that these types of projects, they do flow through local select boards, and local select boards are the ones who are charged with being able to prioritize and identify what's best for their communities. That's why I am so amazingly proud of the fact that we have the support and endorsement of over 10 select board members from across this district that represent 5 of the 6 towns here. So there's a number of people who understand and identify the value that we would bring to this seat, both in this and many different facets.
Thank you. Mr. Vaughn, would you like a minute to add?
I have nothing to add.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. Okay, so we have time for one last of the issues before we go into our segment 3 wrap up. So this one is, we saved the best for last. No, I'm kidding. This is general, meaning by general I mean we called it medical freedom and under medical freedom access to reproductive care. So sort of a combination. I know that Massachusetts has is at this time settled with women's access to reproductive care. However, we know it going on at the federal level. And along with that issue, I wanted to kind of couple it with medical freedom, because that is what I do hear a lot, again, post-COVID, with the vaccination idea, and vaccinations and requirements, et cetera, that have kind of, it's very recent come to light, this anti-vax and movement, and it's kind of exploding, it seems now. So that I just want to explain this issue, because I did couple it, medical freedom, and you guys can take it in the direction that you want, that works for you. Mr. Vaughn,
yes, thank you. So yes, this is a very interesting topic, and obviously with decisions that have been brought down federally and given those decisions back to the states to, and back to the voters to make those decisions for women's reproductive rights. I tend to take more of a libertarian approach. Small government should not be in the business of making, choices for our bodies and women's bodies. I think, obviously if we have the resources for women to make a decision about an abortion, we should also, on the other side, have the appropriate resources for women to make a decision on placement of the child to adoptive parents, so that all decisions are thoughtfully put through before a very critical decision like that is made. On the other end, vaccines, vaccine mandates. Again, if it's my body, my choice, we can't on the other side, expect people to accept the fact that our federal government is looking to mandate vaccines. The recent COVID vaccine that was released by many manufacturers, and manufacturers like Pfizer have been, they've been documented to say that the vaccine does not prevent the spread of the virus. Obviously it diminishes the symptoms of the virus, but it does not prevent the spread of the virus. So this would be an unprecedented, push through and mandate of a vaccine that is still untested against its counterparts. And I'm not on the side of anti-vax. I received the vaccine myself, my family did, but there needs to be a lot more evidence put through by these manufacturers before, this is even put on the table and forced down the throats of Americans and people worldwide. So,
thank you. Mr. Calcutt.
Thank you. So first and foremost, I want to make sure that I'm abundantly clear. Access to reproductive health care is a human right, and that is why I am so proud that the Commonwealth codified the actions of the Roe Act in 2020 to ensure that Massachusetts was not subjected to the decision made by the Supreme Court. I also want to make sure that I note that I have been fully endorsed by Planned Parenthood and by Reproductive Equity Now for my support of these rights. Throughout this campaign, especially during the primary, we heard a lot from people who were concerned about that, who didn't quite understand what that meant for them, if they were going to be able to have access or not have access. And I think the way that we're structured currently in Massachusetts right now is a great spot. However, I would still want to make sure that everybody has equitable access to those abortion health care items. So making sure that exorbitant costs are withheld for people who can't afford them, to make sure that there are no restrictions with insurance providers to ensure that you can have those costs be covered, and to also make sure that facilities have the appropriate resources to be able to deliver those services. And then, as we go into the vaccine question, I understand the concern about the CDC's recent suggestion of adding this to the number of vaccines that are put forth by the schools. But I want to make sure that we're very clear. Nothing has been mandated yet. That was merely a suggestion from a federal organization that is then given to the states to be able to decide. And from that perspective, I agree. I don't believe that there is enough evidence or data right now to really identify and justify having that be a mandated item. Now, as time goes on, we may hear more, we may get some more data and understand that there are some other benefits, and perhaps it could be identified as a potential item down the road. But as of right now, I agree. I don't think there's enough out there to really define that as something that would have a great benefit or decrease transmission within these organizations. Excuse me. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Mr. Vaughn, would you like another minute on this topic? No, okay,
Not,
good.
not needed, thank you.
Okay, and I think we're good. So that wraps up our segment 2 on the issues, which I think was great. I think we had like a nice range of topics that are all very local, whether they're hyper local, like some of them, like the MBTA commuter rail line that we have here right in our town, right outside the studio, but also addressing some of the things that are maybe a little bit or statewide as well. So I think that was great. And so our segment 3 is basically a wrap up. Mr. Calkin, I'm gonna let you go first. Is there anything you want to add? You've got 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes. Anything else you want to add? Something that maybe we didn't quite touch on and have enough for, and again, we can also put up the websites for each of you, so for more information. So go ahead, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. So first and foremost, additional information about our campaign can be found on our website. That is calcut4rep.com.
Okay.
We update that website daily with new information, new endorsements, new events, and all those types of things. So anybody looking for more information, that is the best place to do it. If you're looking to get in contact with us, we have a chat function there within the context of the website that goes directly to my cell phone. So if somebody has a question, they see something they don't really understand, just throw it into the chat box, I'll get it on my phone, and we'll have a direct communication line from there. If you'd like a different way to get in contact with us, we have email addresses, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have carrier pigeons, calls, text messages, smoke screens, whatever you need to get in touch with us, it's out there right now. So we have the ability to be able to make those connections and answer whatever questions come up. However, if you're looking for more in-person interaction, we actually will be set up at the Beer Garden event here in Norfolk Center on Sunday, which is a fantastic event for somebody, if anybody has never been to one, where we have 2 local businesses. This time it'll be 2 businesses from Medfield who will be hosting. And they set up there from noon until 7 p.m. They have live music. It's a great time had by y'all. I'll be set up there from 2:30 to 5:30 p.m. if anybody wants to come over, chat, or just support 2 great small businesses.
Okay, great.
I'll end my portion just in closing to identify that I really enjoyed if everybody walked away from this engagement with 3 key things. The first one is that I believe I'm the best candidate for this race because of the relationships that I've built. I have consistently been a partner to everyone from select board members, school committee members, small business leaders, other neighboring state legislators, state senators, members of the federal delegation, everybody across the board. The support that I've gotten from those folks is indicative of how my experience, policy chops, and ability to build coalitions has delivered results locally and will continue to do so on Beacon Hill. Number 2, as a member of local government on the select board, there is no Democrat or Republican next to your name. Your job is to deliver results for your community, and that's what I've done and will continue to do. It's not about voting to advance a party's political agenda. It's about making sure that you're doing the right thing to build consensus. That's why I'm so proud to have the support from individuals across the political spectrum. And number 3, if voters in this district want a candidate who's going to build coalitions to deliver results and not add to the partisan political games and demonizing of folks on other side of the aisle, I am your candidate. My name is Kevin Calcut, and once again, I thank you so much for watching this engagement, and I humbly ask for your vote on November 8th.
Thank you, Mr. Calcut. Mr. Vaughn, you
Yes.
Get to do up to 5 minutes. And,
Thank you.
Addressing anything else you want.
Yes, so you can find out more information about our campaign on our website at Vaughn4staterep.com. Again, like Mr. Calcut, social media outlets on Facebook, Instagram, and a newly created Twitter account just this week. We also have a host of events as we come up to November 8th. One event that we are hosting is this weekend, actually, downtown Rentham at the Common, the Spooktacular Soiree. So I would, cordially invite anyone that wants to learn more about our campaign to come out, see some great pumpkins that are carved by local artists. Come say hi to me, ask me any questions. We would absolutely love to have you. That's over the nights of Saturday and Sunday from 6 to 8. We'll have a bunch of food trucks out and some great music provided by some local talent. I'm here to work for 9th Norfolk District. Obviously, I've never served in any capacity of public office, but I am absolutely determined to make sure that I listen to our constituents and the will of the people within the district, as we are, destined to be on Beacon Hill. One thing I'd like to leave, and Mr. Calcutt said it, we had a situation coming into the building where I was approached by the Democratic committee chair here in Norfolk. It was very disheartening, where the gentleman asked me why I was a Republican, and I responded with, "Is it because I'm a black male?" And he therefore responded, "Yes, it is because of that." I think that is unbelievably, not the right way of thinking for, this district and the state overall. It's totally unbiased. I am for all the people, and it shouldn't be a partisan, this way of thinking or that way of the thinking. I think more of us are in the middle today. I appreciate Mr. Calcutt. I think he was told of the interaction as we came into the building today, and he gave me his best and apologized. But I just want people in the district to realize that I think we have more commonalities than ever before, and this state, with the landscape that we're in, we need to make the right choice to set our district forward and our state forward, and have a well-balanced approach, and different opinions sometimes lead to those successes that our state really searches for. So I just want to leave you with this. Marcus Vaughn, please cast your vote for myself or the candidate next to me, Mr. Calcutt. It's a democratic process. Every vote counts, and everyone should get to the polls and vote this November. So thank you very much, and really appreciate the time you've given us today, Jill and Mr. Calcutt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. So it's a good reminder to whoever you choose, whatever way you go, to get out on November 8th and vote. Or early voting is open. On behalf of Norfolk Community TV, I'm really pleased that we were able to offer this today. I feel like I said at the beginning, it's kind of a nice service to our community, our town of Norfolk, but also to the whole 9th District, Norfolk 9th, and to be able to present like a candidates forum that we were able to moderate and be fair and neutral, and let you speak, and let everyone hear your voices. So I'm really appreciative that I got the chance to do it, and thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Calcutt. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's a wrap for today. So thanks again on behalf of NCTV and our town. I'm Jill Hindley Lawrence, and thank you for watching.